Hey folks, we're at the Ardurra interview, so let's get to it. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
We know the, we know everything works.
I think you're good, yeah. Audio's good, video's good. Do you know if Sean was going to be joining
I
us?
don't know that answer.
Okay. Well, I understood this to be more of an informal way for us to get to know you. We're going to be working under you. You're going to be our mentor and all things structural. So, if you kind of wanted to get started by introducing yourself, then we can introduce ourselves.
Okay. My name is Michael Bradbury. I'm a structural engineer with 25 years experience. So I pretty much design and review all sorts of structures. So it's, your bridges, all buildings, water structures, the whole 9 yards. So I've got plenty of experience in that. I'm licensed as a structural engineer in California. And that's pretty much it. So I live here in San Jose. Do you need any additional information? Would you like any additional information about me, or?
I think to start, that's good. My name is Andrea Mosqueda. I'm a licensed civil engineer. My background is general civil, but I did receive my master's in structural last year. And so for the last year and a half, 2 years, I've been working on minor structural projects with Bradley. Um, and he's kind of been helping guide me through that process, introducing me to structural modeling, calculations, analysis, and that sort of thing. But other than structural, I have about 5 years of experience in general civil. And then I guess my structural experience is about a year and a half. Alex, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Alex D. I am currently in the Bay Area right now, but I'm based out of the El Segundo office down in Southern California. I've also worked with Bradley a little bit in the past few months with some minor structural projects as well. My background is largely in public works, construction, and design, my academic background does consist of a master's in structural engineering as well.
Melesio, go for it.
Melesio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My name is Melesio. I'm here in Sacramento with Bradley. I recently graduated from UC Davis with a bachelor's in civil engineering, but I've just been helping out Bradley with structural work, and my actual boss, like, we've been doing more water work stuff, but I occasionally help out Bradley with different projects, like doing CAD work, like structural modeling, some calculations.
Yeah, so that's us, and I do work out of the San Jose office too. So when you're in the office, you would probably see me around. There's a couple other folks. Two of them are based. They do the more of the water side, so that would be Shamala and Caitlin, who are in the San Jose office, and then Eli Farah, who's also a registered civil engineer. He also would be working out of the San Jose office, which is under construction right now. But once it opens back up, we'll probably be in there a few times a week. Our company's pretty flexible, so I'm sure they'll allow us to continue to work remotely, which is good. But the office is there as an option, if
Mm-hmm.
that's your thing.
Yeah, I live here in town, so that wouldn't be a problem. I know where it is. It's North First Street. It's by the airport, so I know where that office is. I've actually driven by it a lot, because on the way to the airport, or there's a sushi place that my wife and I we all go to by your office, so I know where that is. So I'm very familiar with it. So about my background, pretty much, I have a master's in structural engineering, so I've been doing this for 25 years. What happened in my case was because of what's happened before, just different types of structures, and it wasn't by choice. And when I say that, it basically means that certain parts of the company one of the companies I worked for, I actually designed environmental engineering structures, and then the company went downhill in 2000 with the dot-com bust. I don't know if you were around about that time or remember it. Basically, all the dot-com companies blew up, basically. So a lot of companies were laying off, and it affected me because a lot of computers were sold at that time. If you probably heard about Y2K, they were selling a lot of computers. Well, in the computers, there's gold, and they also did mining. So that company went downhill. So then my next stop was California, so I designed a whole bunch of structures, and then in '09 the economy fell apart, the Great Recession. A lot of the banks went belly up, pretty much what's kind of going on now, but not really. That was before they enforced all the rules on banks. So, and then I got into plan check. I did that for about 4 or 5 years, and I've been doing design and review work all the time. So it's pretty much everything, all the materials, the steel, wood, concrete, masonry, high-rise buildings, low-rise buildings, and everything in between. So, I've been doing that, and then just recently the client I worked for had passed away. He died during the pandemic, so he had cancer. So that's why I'm looking for the new opportunity with him.
Okay.
Not with him, with your firm, I mean, sorry. I think about him a lot, my old contractor client a lot, because he did a lot of good work. During those 5 years, I designed soft story retrofits. That's where the bottom of the apartment buildings could collapse in an earthquake. And the city of San Francisco mandated that they make those strong enough because they don't want the apartments to collapse in an earthquake. So that kept me busy for about 5 years. And now I'm just looking for, a more stable opportunity, So, and I do enjoy working with the younger people. I'm going to be honest about that because you guys know all the software. I think that's great. The problem is when you don't know what's coming out of the computer. So I've been more of the type of, okay, is this real or not, basically? Is it garbage in, garbage out? I did do CAD work. I haven't done it lately. And the reason is, in my generation, what's happened is drafters did the drafting and engineers did the engineering, and I think that's a good system. The problem I've had, with AutoCAD in the past, and I don't know if Revit does this now. I haven't led too many Revit projects, but basically in the old days, AutoCAD was layered. So if you put something on the wrong layer and your client tries using the information from it, it's a big problem. So I just leave the drafting to the drafting for that reason. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not going to able to go in there and edit stuff, like text and things like that, So I'm pretty much familiar with all the engineering software, your ETAB, SAP, SAFE, RISA, the whole 9 yards, so.
Cool. So you've essentially been self-employed for the last 10 years, or?
Self-employed, yeah. I've been pretty much going around the West working, so I've been in Seattle and I've worked in Seattle, I've worked in Denver, I've worked in San Diego, Los Angeles, and even here in the Bay Area. So that's what's kept me busy. Usually I'm the one that's been called when a lot of the firms, what's happened is they get into a bind. They hire engineers, and the engineer that they hired either quit or they get in way over their head. So I have to come in and straighten it out, basically. So.
Cool.
I get called.
So would you say you do more plan checking or more design work?
I would do more design work, so I want to emphasize that experience is 20 years of design work and 5 years of review work. That's the total experience. And as I said before, it's not by choice. During the Great Recession, I went to Texas to work because at that time nobody was building anything. Santa Clara County, where you are, had 12% unemployment, which is really high. That was unheard of at that time. And it wasn't that I didn't want to design buildings, it's just the work wasn't available. The banks froze all the money.
Understood. Well, it seems like you have a lot of experience. We're basically looking for someone to kind of guide us in our engineering, I guess, early years, I suppose, with regards to structural engineering.
Yeah.
Have you had a lot of experience doing that, mentoring younger engineers like us?
I have, yes, and I did that recently at some of the places I've worked because what I've seen with a lot of the younger engineers, they don't know where to start or how to set things up. That's usually the problem that I've seen, so you have to ask for help from experienced people like myself. So my approach is, when I did building designs with engineers, I let them try to learn how to do it on their own, have them, give them a time limit, have them come, and then we compare results. And the reason you do that is you want to see how you do the work, basically. I want to see how you're doing the work, how you think, and what you can learn. When you do it that way, you learn from each other. I learn from you, and you learn from me. It's an even split, because sometimes I won't see something, I may be the best engineer I can be, but I don't always think of everything. When you get older, you learn more of what you don't know than what you know. So, the other thing I recommend the young people do is just try not to memorize everything. Just know where it is. If you use it enough, that's fine. It'll stick in your memory. But I wouldn't expect that from you. And in my career, I'm the one that gets called usually when I go to building departments. I've been told I'm very good to work with because I have very few plan check comments. It really depends on who the reviewer is. So you can get somebody that's inexperienced or somebody that's very experienced. It's the whole length of the spectrum.
So have you worked with a lot of municipalities in the Bay Area or NorCal?
Are we talking about submitting plans? Yeah, I've done a lot, mainly Northern California, San Francisco. I've done it with the state as well. I don't know if you're familiar with California. Public schools and hospitals are reviewed by the state. And I've worked with some of them are good and some of them are, experienced. It depends what you get, basically. It depends which office.
That's DSA, right?
Yeah, Division of the State Architect. It used to be OSHPA, now it's called HCAI now. HCAI, that's the hospital plan reviewer for the state of California, and it's been that way since the 1930s.
Yeah, so because I think you would be the only California SE if you were to join our team. Is it a goal of yours to pursue work that requires an SE, or I don't know if you have a preference to maybe not work on those projects because of how stringent those restrictions are?
I'll tell you my story. The reason I got the SE was at the time I was designing a lot of public schools, so it was important to have it. In California, only schools, hospitals, I think it's buildings over 9 stories tall, require the SE. So I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought my original career plan was there was a firm I was working for. I was there 5 years, and I thought I was going to be staying there, and then the Great Recession hit, so that a lot of engineers got laid off. But that's a tough exam to pass. Only three out of every 4 people that take the exam fail it. So it's a tough exam. And now they've done it. It's been revised, so now you can go to a Pearson testing center and take it. When I took it in my day, it was all paper. So you have it lucky.
Is the SE now pen and paper?
No, SE is going to be electronic. Civil is electronic. When I took it back 20 years ago, it was all paper. It was multiple choice.
Right.
Now you go to a Pearson testing center to take it, basically.
Right. So are you familiar now with the licensing requirements for structural engineers to kind of help us guide?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with those. I'm actually licensed as a structural engineer in California, Colorado, Texas, and Washington. And Washington, the reason you have to get that one, every state has different rules on what a structural engineer has to seal. Like Illinois, which I don't have, any structural has to be sealed by an SE. Okay? Nevada's the same way. Washington State, you can civil engineer, it's very small buildings. Structural engineer in Washington State has to seal bridges and buildings over, there's a certain occupancy. Basically, those podium structures you've probably seen with the apartments on top of the retail. Yeah, those would be an SE. That's an example.
Okay.
Different states, different laws.
Okay. And for our curiosity, have you met with Bradley yet? Have you had a formal interview?
I have had an interview with him. This is the second one with you, just to discuss what it's like to work with you, pretty much.
Yeah. So did he kind of tell you what your role would be once you joined our team? Because we're not sure, right?
I'm going to be overseeing you guys. That's the plan.
Okay.
So making sure that things are done right, under budget as much as I can. And for the younger engineers, that helps because sometimes you don't know what you're doing sometimes, or if there's a faster way to do it. And that's where I come in.
Do you have any questions for us?
Let's see. So when you said small projects, what were you working on, if you mind me asking?
So for me, what I've worked on, I've done quite a bit of foundation slab design for some charging stations for city bus stations. I've also recently worked on a steel frame structure that it's essentially a glorified pipe rack. So that's a 2-story structure with steel piles and steel beams, and modeling that in Stat Pro. We use Stat in our office, so that was the first time I actually used Stat, and so figuring out how that software works, and then modeling the structure, figuring out what my loading assumptions were going to be, and then that project specifically wasn't a design, it was a review of a design that was already put together by another contractor. And so reviewing all of the connections and all of the element sizes to make sure that it was, structurally sound, and then putting that submittal package together and submitting it to the Bureau of Reclamation. So that was a little more involved, but that's the biggest, I guess, structural project that I've worked on with Bradley.
What about you, Alex? New Melesio? Is that how it's pronounced? If I mispronounce it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Melesio, go ahead if you want.
Yeah, I've helped out Bradley with some small foundation slab designs, a little bit for a retaining wall design. Helped him out with that, and then I also did one of those canopies for the solar panels. I helped him out with the design on that and modeling it in Stat Pro, and another smaller shade structure for a fire station somewhere in SoCal. I helped him out with the design for that, where it was a kind of a small design so that the city can get a picture of what it would look like and what kind of size members it would be, and they would give it off to a contractor, and they would decide how big it actually is. I think a pre-engineered structure is what they told me. They would go and give the information to somebody else, and they would pre-engineer it. That's about it that I've helped Bradley out with.
I've helped Bradley. My project's probably the most limited out of the three of us. It's only one project I've kind of fully performed, which is a water tank, a concrete water tank. I just designed the steel reinforcement requirements, and I also modeled it in STAD, but I feel like there's a lot of challenge. Something I'm starting to realize is a lot of the challenge in structural engineering comes from how you want to model something in software that's going to be built in real life, because you obviously you don't build things on rollers and pins. Those are idealized concepts for connections that occur in real life that are theoretically supposed to behave like that, but obviously do not behave like that in real life. So just which engineering assumptions you have to make when modeling. So that was my experience with that. I will be helping him out with, I'm not sure how to call this, we're capping a channel and building a sidewalk over that, so there might be some pedestrian load calculations, and I'm also going to help him out with an impact barrier to catch debris coming down a bluff. These are part of the same project. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Pretty much now you've altered the walls, unless he's got a way to make sure that the walls don't transfer the moment into the slab or anything like that. So I've heard of that. I lived in Seattle for a while, and that was common. What they do now is they put lids over freeways and put trees and stuff on it, because they don't want to see a bridge, basically. So if you've ever driven to Seattle, you will see it. In one of the areas close to downtown, the freeway goes under the convention center. And that's a very big building. The freeway, it's built over the freeway, and the reason
it's called the Big Dig, yeah.
No, that's Boston. I said Seattle.
That's Boston. No, but it's similar concept, I would say.
Yeah, the Big Dig is underground. This is above ground, basically. So when you drive down I-5, you see it. I don't know if you're familiar with Seattle. It's just north of the. I can't think of the name of it. It's where the Seahawks play in the Mariners.
I think I've driven through that area. I didn't really know whether I was above grade or not. A lot of these downtown areas by coastal cities are built on filth, from what I understand, correct?
Yes. Yeah, San Francisco's that way. I know Seattle's that way. I had to learn that, and that makes it interesting for all the seismic challenges. So I've designed a seismic category D. I also worked in LA and designed a seismic category E, which is challenging because that was very similar. It was very poor soils. It's near a fault line. I worked in LA in the Santa Clarita area, which is north of LA. So they build on seismic category E because the fault line, I think it's the Hayward Fault, is literally close there. So you get very big seismic forces. And a lot of times I'd be guiding you is basically what type of structure you'd be using, building or otherwise, because it's not the problem isn't the engineering I found, it's the assumptions you put into it. You know, so you try to figure out.
What software have you used then? Let's say for this project that was category E.
There's a whole bunch. There's eTab, SAP, Safe. I've seen. I reviewed some of these, so it's RISA. Some of them are Excel hand calcs, you know, because a lot of them are wood buildings. Because where this area is, there's not many high-rise buildings because the city does not allow it. You know, some cities have what are called height restrictions, so you can't build a 500-foot tall tower, you know, in the city. You know, you're limited to 50 feet, you know, or something like that. So the way I would come into, you know, because of that review experience, I know what people look for, you know, and I expect it to have enough, and usually, you know, so that you can get your permit. And when you have a happy plan reviewer, you have it, you know, they're gonna put you at the top. I've seen this first in one of the cities I worked in LA. They actually did this. They put, if you did your job as an engineer well, they put your plans at the head of the pack because they know that you're going to get through it. If you have bad plans, they put you at the bottom, so it takes weeks. And that's one of the tricks, you know. In my you know, before I started plan review, it was all done by paper. Now it's all electronic. Everybody submits electronically now, and then there's software that reviews that information. So I try to get the plan set up so that when they get reviewed the second time, they can go and get their permit. It's a lot easier because they can go through it. You know, now they have software. They take the old version of the plan, take the new one, put one on top of the other, and what's changed, it changes color. It's real neat.
Yep. It's like Bluebeam. I think it's Bluebeam.
Bluebeam does it, yes. There's another one that I worked with. The plan review software company made it. It was a different company. It was before Bluebeam came about, but it was very popular. So where did you guys get your degrees?
Alex, do you want to start?
Where?
Yeah, both my undergrad and master's program was from USC. I did a progressive degree program, so I kind of fulfilled some of my requirements as an undergrad. So in total, it took around 5.5 years for both of my degrees.
Cool.
I got mine at my bachelor's at UC Davis.
I did my undergrad at Stanford, and we have a dry track and a wet track there. So my undergrad was more focused on structures, but it was a civil engineering bachelor's. And then I did 2 years at Cal State Long Beach for also technically a civil engineering master's, but with a structural focus. So steel, concrete, and I did one earthquake design course as well, finite element method. I haven't done any timber, which I hear is pretty common. I'm hoping that's one of the things I can learn on the fields because I have little to no experience in timber.
Okay. I'm actually from the East Coast, and I'm out in California because work brought me here. So it's Clarkson University. It's on the East Coast. It's close to the Canadian border in the state of New York. So I got a bachelor's, got a master's, and then just recently got another master's because, you know, from University of British Columbia, which is in Vancouver, BC, which is a heavily seismic area as well. The west coast of the U.S. as well as west coast of Canada is very high seismic. And the reason I did it was when I was in college, they didn't have the defined lateral systems we have now. You know, you're probably familiar with your steel moment frames. When I went to school, they had no differentiation between the three types of steel moment frames. Now they do. And the problem I had when I worked on this was basically trying to figure out, you know, how they work and when they're appropriate, you know. Because even in seismic category E, you can still use an ordinary moment frame. You know, but you have certain things that they allow it for, you know, basically if it's a lightweight building, but, so pretty much my career, it's all the materials, you know, right now I'm taking post-tension concrete because when I was in grad school, they didn't offer it, so I'm taking that now, you know, with the University of British Columbia, because I feel like I didn't have the knowledge, and this is a class that goes into the, you know, what it's like. It's not just having the software, it's what's going into the software is more important, you know, what is it based on, basically, because the thing with software I have a problem with is garbage in, garbage out. You know, what is it doing?
But would you say, because you mentioned, you know, like these ordinary moment frames, right? They can be used for type E, but they're intricacies, right? But those are things that aren't really taught in a class. They're defined in the code, right? So
it's defined in
how to look things up in the code. So how do you, I guess,
you
want to build a foundation, I guess?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. You learn that on pretty much on the job, in school you're taught basically the theory behind it and what it does. And in the class I took, they talked about where it was used. Basically, there's code limitations, so they taught about that. When I went to get my master's degree, those weren't in the code yet.
I see.
Buckle restrained brace frames weren't around yet back in the late 90s. They've only been around for 10 years. So, for me, I felt it was a disadvantage. And in a design perspective, you want to design the most, you want your building to be very efficient. If you don't know what something is, the problem I have with learning it on the job is it costs the client money. And it costs the company money. When you have a class, you can interact and ask questions. And with this program I'm doing, the thing I like is, you can do it. It's at night. It's on Zoom, but you still get to ask questions and you get to do homework on it. I did one class was performance-based design of buildings, and they teach you how to design a high-rise, basically. What goes into the computer. And it, it's a secret that it's not going to save you money. It's just allowing you to do things that the code doesn't allow, like these high-rise buildings. Right. I'll give you an example. In the old days, when I was an engineer, that wasn't around, but you had to put a concrete core and put moment frames on the outside. Now you can do it without the frames on the outside. So there's a whole bunch of things that go into that.
And would you say, because I obviously haven't taken the SE exam yet, when you took it versus what's in it now, has it changed a lot? Because now there are all of these new,
Yes, it has. The SE, when I took it, it wasn't a national exam. It was it wasn't a 16-hour national like it is now. It is one day was national and one day was the state of California. The state of California offered their own exam, and that was a tougher one. The California exam was once a year. The national exam was twice a year. And when I took it, the IBC wasn't the code that was enforced at the time. And it's hard to pass an exam when you don't use it. It's like physical therapy. You use it or you have to practice with it in order to pass the exam. And I failed the national exam, but passed the California exam. Most people, it's the other way around. It's the national they pass, and the California they fail. And when I took it, it was national was you had to do morning and afternoon 2 essay questions. Okay. And when California was done, it was 50 multiple choice questions in the morning and 3 essay questions at night in the PM session. And it was tough. You really had no time to look stuff up. You either knew it or you didn't. And with the new format, now it's going to be not only multiple choice, you're going to be able to move stuff on the screen, basically. Use your mouse to, they'll say, this is a beam, put this information, where would you put, the bars, stuff like that.
So do you sit on are you involved in like CSOC or any other structural committee, or what is your involvement, I guess, outside of your quote unquote work? Right now I'm a Structural Engineers Association of British Columbia, and I only do one because I'm just really busy with that class. And SEABC, in order to get, when you take the classes, you get a discount if you're a member. So okay. I didn't want to pay for a whole bunch, if I'm not going to use it, And, and the reason I did I did the classes is I feel they're more practical. The problem with the seminar for me, and this is just me, I'm not saying it's you guys, you go to the seminar, and if you don't use it, you lose it. You have to learn how to use it. And you have to practice with it for it to sink in. With a class, you have, 3 months, and you build it up slowly, but also you get to ask questions along the way. And depending on the class, like when I was in college, they gave stuff back right away. And the reason I like that is you see how you did. If you make the mistake early on, you get to correct it later. What I didn't like was when they graded the stuff and handed it to you at the end of the semester. I don't like that because now you're being told, pretty much, you basically learned it the wrong way for 3 months. And you're not going to retain it. Right. So just out of curiosity, are you a Canadian citizen? No, I'm not. Or you do a lot of work in Canada? No, what happened at that time was Structural Engineers Association of California didn't offer it. The British Columbia Society did, and it's been advertised for a while.
So they get, and it's really good because it's $500 a class, U.S., which is really cheap. If you remember going to grad school, when I went to grad school, it was $3,000 a class. Now, which would you rather pay?
Right.
So
it's a 2-year program, and
no, there's no limit on it. Actually, you can take it at your own pace. That's what I liked about it. And when the pandemic was happening, one of my contractor client couldn't do any work. Okay. Because at that time, all the hotels were shut down. And in order to do soft stories retrofits, when you displace the tenants, they have to be put in a hotel. That can't happen when all the hotels are shut down. So what I decided to do was take a whole bunch of different classes. I started small, like one class, because I wanted to see what it was, and then it became 2, and then it became 3. And I learned all sorts of stuff, like how to use MathCAD. That was one I didn't know how to use. Another one was using ETABS. They, with the performance-based class, you get to, design a tall building. They give it to you and say, put all the information in. What's the results? And the other ones are just hard, because what I don't like, one of them I had, he did the homework, but he never gave the answers. That makes it very difficult. Because you don't know what you did right or wrong, For all you could have just guessed it.
And these projects that you were working on use the codes that are used by Canada? Do they use ASCE 716 or?
Some of them do. The one I did with the performance-based buildings, it was the U.S. code, and then also there's they taught Canadian and U.S. for the high-rise towers. A lot of them are, I was surprised, U.S. units, and they have different codes and different laws with their structures. Like, for example, 2% in 50 years is their design-based earthquake up there. Here it's 10% in 50 years. So they have different laws, different rules, but it doesn't mean that you forget your statics, your trade materials, your basic design classes. It doesn't mean those are forgotten.
Yeah, the approach is the same. You're just using different variables, right? Different values for your variables.
Yeah, the problem I had also was the metric system, because in the U.S. we don't use it, and that was tough for me.
Yeah. And we have a lot of empirical equations that have very specific constants to us, to imperial.
Yeah, Andrea, you were talking about wood. I learned it, there was a class I took in college, and that was wood and masonry were one combined class. And I'm surprised Stanford didn't offer, and I'll tell you why. Because in California we build with wood a lot because it's economically cheaper. We get a lot of it from Washington. Washington State and Oregon have a lot of forests, and that's the thing now, because a lot of the forests are catching fire, so they're telling people to cut down the trees. Because what happens is when you get a forest fire, they all burn.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't really need a lot of analysis for 1-2-story wood systems for the most part, right? It's just anything under 3 stories. I think you can just follow a developer's plan, right? It's cookie cutter.
Not necessarily. I've done a lot of wood buildings where pretty much they're wood beams, wood joists, and some of them have steel because I want to have big spans. I designed one that was wood floors, and I put in structural steel columns because they were a lot smaller, because the architect wanted that, because it's easier to put in a 5-inch steel column than a 12 by 12 big massive column. It really depends also on the architect as well, and also the building code. There are certain building types you can't design a 7-city block wood building. 9 city blocks. You can't do that. Unless there are certain precautions in it. So that can also, because of the size, it prohibits the material you can use. For fire reasons.
Well, do you guys have any more questions, Alex or Melesio? I've been asking a lot.
Nothing off the top of my head, but just so you know, us three, we're not dedicated structural engineers. We wear a lot of other hats in other departments. So, just letting you know, essentially, one thing that kind of I liked about this company was that it was really was really good at kind of pushing, at allowing us to pursue what we want to do, essentially. And we have a wide variety of work, whereas some other younger engineers earlier on in their careers, they kind of get pigeonholed into individual roles. So another thing I really like is that what we do, our structural scope, whenever we get that typically ties into other disciplines of engineering that we also practice. So yeah, just giving you a heads up of how this firm kind of organizes its work.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a lot of office?
Yeah,
Sorry. Is there a lot of...
I was just going to say, to kind of tie into that, is that, so because I've worked on projects where, like, let's say we're only the structural, right, and you have a sub who is doing the civil, and there isn't a lot of communication, right, and so you progress towards a 35-65, but there have been so many other changes on the civil side, and then you have to update your work, right, to reflect those changes. Whereas sometimes we're lucky enough that we're both civil and structural, and so we're literally chatting all day, like, hey, we're updating this member size, make sure your civil plan reflects that. And that kind of helps us be more efficient in that sense. But go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to say basically is, having everything in-house is a great advantage, Sometimes it's not. Like, I work for an AE firm, and sometimes what happens is the architect gets carried away. I bumped into the coordination issue, too, where they are designing stuff and then don't tell me. And that's one of my big pet peeves. I like being told if you're going to change something, fine, tell me. Because what happens is you burn through budget really fast that way when you're working on something and they're changing it. Wouldn't you rather work on the part that isn't changing? If you're going to, that's one of my pet peeves, and I tell them, if you're changing something, please tell me. I'll stop working on it and do something else, because I don't like spinning my wheels, and then it's like putting too many fires out, you're doing it and then, we're changing the conditions, no. And I have a big pet peeve on that, and as a boss, I don't like it because then you guys get burned out, and that angers me, and what my philosophy is, I want to feel like I did something, and when you feel like you've done something and it didn't achieve anything, you feel upset.
Yeah.
What did I do?
Pretty good about voicing that same concern. I know the steel frame project I mentioned to you was supposed to be a design review, right? And we had the contract drawings, and all we had to do was copy those contract drawings into a model, right? Make sure it worked. And then the contractor ended up changing a bunch of things. They added all these new elements, right? New loading assumptions, all of these things changed. And so Bradley had to go back and say, hey, we weren't scoped to do this, right? Now we need more time, we need more budget because the project's become a design build now. So he shares the same concern in that he prioritizes that the client knows that. Because like you mentioned, right, that ended up falling on me where I was now rushing to get stuff in because the timeline didn't change, right? The scope increased, but they didn't give us more time. So that's just to say, I think Bradley definitely shares that concern in that, and he'll prioritize that.
Yeah. With engineering, I've done this for 25 plus years. When you change the scope, what happens is for insurance reasons, if you go outside the scope and something happens, the insurance company doesn't protect you. That's bad. It's like, the exclusions for your automotive insurance, your car insurance. If you do something and it's an exclusion, we aren't going to pay for it. This is the same thing, And, the thing, I bumped into the budget thing too. The problems I've had, or it could be a good company, it could be, you could do well, but also when they change the scope, I dealt with this with AE where they were changing the scope. They wanted to put a fancy glass guardrail on the outside of a building, and then later they found out, planning wouldn't let us do it because it's in a historic area. And, that's something I ask, did you get approval from anything outside the building? Did you get approval from planning? Because some of them, there's certain materials and certain looks, and I'm not an architect. I'm lousy at picking materials and what it looks like. That's why I leave that with the architect for that reason. If you look at my house, before my wife and I got married, it was a hodgepodge of everything. Now it's everything matches. Before I would have like a black couch, a white table. Nothing matched. For me, it was more practical.
And I did have, one more question I wanted to ask. Are you also involved in structural inspections? Do you have experience with that?
It's actually observation is what it is for us, yeah. And I actually specify it on plans, and I do that certain conditions. If there's not enough information on the plan, I require it, and the reason is because I want you to see the condition of it before it gets covered up. Once it's covered up, you can't do anything about it. And two, the building department's going to require it too, and that's the way it gets the permit basically. And when you get a permit, they will put conditions on the plans in order to get a CFO, the final certificate of occupancy signed off, or the final approval. You have to have those records because anything can happen, And I've been also on the litigation side also, and what happens is you don't want to be there. It's like being in the principal's office. It's not fun. But when you have all your ducks in a row, you're off the hook. That's the best thing. It also helps you catch it because sometimes when you put this on the plan, you don't know how the contractor is going to interpret it, And I've had instances where that's happened, and I've had, even retrofits changed. They opened up, one of them, we opened up a wall, and there's wires in the wall, basically. We can't put a shear wall in it, literally, because there's wiring from the 1930s, which is pretty big, massive conduits. You can't move it, or gas lines. What do you do? So you have to go in and redo the design,
Yeah.
And I'm familiar with, being under the clock, and one of the things I try to do is tell the contractor, this is going to take a while. Do something else. Don't call me. I'll call you. Now, the other question I have is working there, do you guys have a lot of work, a lot of fires to put out pretty much, or is it just you guys get assigned one project and that's it?
From my experience, I'll work on maybe 4 or 5 projects at a time. Obviously, they're not all due the same week, but there are weeks where, let's say, just to give you an idea, because we do have a lot of backlog, and sometimes they all end up getting kicked off at the same time. So I could have a submittal on Friday, but I'm getting work from both Bradley, who's in structural, and my supervisor, who's in civil. So I'm working towards a deadline, but I still need to kind of make progress on another project. But we're pretty good about meeting every week, or every day, really. We have check-in meetings so we can talk about what's on my plate. And that way, if I'm unable to get to something, I can voice that and try to get someone else to help me do that. And there are a lot of us, for example, if I need to pass off the civil work to someone else, I can do that so that I can focus on the structural, and kind of vice versa. So yes, we work on a lot of projects at a time, but we make sure we support each other so that it can all get done. I don't know if Alex or Melesio, you want to add to that?
So Andrea and I are actually part of the same public works group, and we all primarily work on public works, civil, municipality projects. But I feel like almost every member has an additional something else they bring to the team. So, for example, one of our engineers, he designs traffic plans as well, in addition to civil, municipal road work. We have a few of our project managers on staff augmentation for different cities. So it goes back to my point of us wearing different hats. So we do, because we do have sometimes fulfill multiple roles, we do end up, it's almost essential that we learn how to multitask projects throughout the week.
Yeah, I guess I'm somewhat similar too. I'm from a different public works group from Central and Southern California, but I just help out Bradley with a few things here and there. And if there's something really urgent, then I can kind of hold off on my projects and then focus on the structural work. Kind of like Andrea, I can tell my boss that they need this structural work done and it's due soon. Someone else can do the civil work, or they can just kind of put it off for now. But yeah, I guess we do have a lot of work, but I just usually help out whenever I can, whenever I have time, or if something's really urgent, I can just help out with the structural work.
Yeah, doing a whole bunch of projects, the problems, it depends on for me, it depends on the project. I don't mind having little projects and big projects, but what happens is when everybody keeps piling on, that's a problem, and the problem I bumped into, even, when you have a lot of them, is things get missed, they go to build it, and oops, you missed a pretty critical detail, like one of my designs, I missed putting the anchorage in the wrong spot. I didn't see it in time, so I had to go and, fix it, and I had others where they the unit where we were going to put the mechanical unit on the roof, they couldn't put it there because there was other stuff in the way and they couldn't move it. So I had to evaluate the existing building and I had to get it ready and submit it to the building department. And that took a while, you know.
Yeah. And I know that working under Bradley, he's pretty good about seeing the big picture and kind of catching all those big things early on and saying, hey, we need to make sure we look at this, this, and this. And so I'll work on those things and submit to him for review, and he'll pick up things that I have a lot less experience, right? So these are things that I'm going to miss because I'm not aware of, whereas he picks it up and he's, I guess, very good about being cognizant of issues that might arise, especially with his experience of inspections, you know, in the field. And so he wants to make sure that we hit those items so that there aren't any issues down the road.
Yeah, and you can do the best you can. It's just what you're dealt with, basically. You know, I've worked on buildings that literally had no plans because engineering wasn't around. I, you know, did a retrofit from 1906, and all they had was the art. I was surprised they had drawings for it. I'll be honest. You know, they apparently put them on somebody preserved them and put them on microfilm. Enough to do it, but sometimes you don't have it. So they have a device, some device you go in the building and it scans it basically. It's a laser scanner, fancy laser scanner. It scans the building.
And just for, I guess, because I'll be working out of the San Jose office, once the office is open, because it's not open right now, like, do you want to go in? Because there are some people that like to be in the office 5 days a week. There are people who don't, avoid it at all costs. Do you have a preference?
It depends what's going on that day. I have a daughter I have to take to school, so I usually try to get in early. I have to take her to school and pick her up. So I can't go in the office most of the time, but if there's a meeting or something and you guys need me, yeah, I'll go into the office because it's better. And I like it having the office if people I'm working on a project from San Jose, we'd like to all meet in the office, we'll sit there, and then the other, you know, we can have Zoom and sit there, because the advantage of having the office is having a big table. Whereas at home, that's a problem. You know, you can have the screens. Right now, I'm looking at you guys through my laptop, but I also have a big screen at home. And that's great, you know, but it's not the same thing as having a big space, you know, because I like to sprawl, you know, my generation was all paper, and I like to have that, so I like to spread it out. And the other thing I do is I use, you know, yes, there's new technology like Bluebeam, but sometimes you have to have the old technology, like light tables and things like that. So when you frame members, okay, what's on top and what's on bottom? How does it go from top to bottom? And those skills don't die. And something about touching a piece of paper is much different than seeing it on the screen. And a lot of people, I've had happen, this is my experience, I don't know if it's yours, when you look at the screen too long, after a while it blends in. It's hard to remember if it all blends in. When there's a piece of paper, something about a piece of paper where you're handling it, basically. Putting it in your hand. And I still use the old-fashioned paper where I write stuff down. I have to write stuff down, you know. And I found stuff like using the touchscreen. Do you guys have touchscreens, or is it all regular laptop?
Laptop for me.
Laptop, yeah. Some people might have Surfaces, but it's mostly laptops.
Yeah. The touchscreen has great advantages. You know, where you want to zoom in on something, yeah, that's great. The problem with the mouse is you just click on it, you know, and sometimes it doesn't get where you wanted to do. Years ago, there was a client I worked for. They had one of these pads, and it didn't work. That was supposed to, you know, allow you to draw like a piece of paper, and it didn't work.
Yeah, I've seen some contractors now have them as well, so that they're able to, for the as-builts, they're able to like look at a specific part of the plan and just kind of mark it up in the field, and all of that gets saved as a PDF, you know, to convert those into as-builts, and or ask questions to submit an RFI or something like that. So yeah, that's a pretty cool tool that we haven't implemented yet, but if you raise that concern, say, hey, I want a tablet because I want this functionality, I'm sure that they'll try to meet your needs.
Yeah, the thing with tablets I've had is basically, you know, a lot of the newer laptops are tablet-based too, with a touchscreen. The problem I've had with them, I had one and the monitor, the screen broke. Because when you flip it over, the structure's not strong enough to hold it in. So I vowed never to get a touchscreen after that. And then what happened later was when I went to buy a computer, all available is touchscreen. You can't get, I go to Costco to get a computer. You can't. All of them are touchscreen, so you can't get out of it. Not having one, you're stuck with what they sell.
Yeah.
So.
Well, our laptops are not touchscreen, and when you get a laptop from us, it probably won't be unless you request it. I don't know what that process looks like. But.
Do you guys have? How many screens do you guys have?
At home, I have my laptop and a second monitor, like a standalone monitor.
And in the office, it's 2 of them? And the laptop?
2
yeah.
monitors.
Or is it curved or flat?
Flat.
Okay. Yeah, I have a curved screen, and the reason I have it is what was happening with the flat screen is my vision was getting really, because it's different depths, it takes a lot of energy to look at it. When you have a curved screen, everything's at the same depth. And that helped me get rid of a lot of the headaches I was having.
Well, yeah, they're opening, our office is going to be open, our renovated office is going to be opening in July, so I don't even think we've started to order everything we need for it yet, but, I'm just to say that they're pretty open about you submitting a request for a specific equipment if it's going to make you more efficient or you need it, right? I think similar to like a standing desk, if you need a standing desk, that's something that they can provide also.
Do you guys stand at your desk?
That's the good thing about working for a company, right? Like, there are options, right? As opposed to you having to invest in all of your equipment.
Now, do you guys have, do you guys like working standing up or not? Or are you more of a sit down?
I personally don't.
Yeah.
Not really. I kind of get up and do stuff throughout the day already, like pretty frequently, so I don't really need one. That being said, I do have one in my office back in my apartment in LA, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, for me, I have to walk away from the computer, because people get vision problems. You look at the screen too long and your eyes hurt. I have glasses for the computer, specifically made when I'm on the computer because it's a different sight setup for a computer than it is for going outside. So.
Do you have any more questions for us?
Yeah, do you know when he's going to fill the position or not, or has he not told you?
I am not sure what the timeline looks like.
Okay. I just didn't know what was going on or what's been promised, pretty much.
But as a team, we've been discussing needing someone to fill this role because it's us and then there's Bradley, and there's too wide of a disconnect between what we need in terms of mentorship and guidance and all of the work that he has to do with not just the technical component, but also all of the business development that he does. So it's it's crucial for our team that we fill the role, but that's all the information I have.
Okay.
I'm not involved in the recruiting process. Yeah.
Yep, I've been more of a, design professional than a business developer, pretty much, my whole career. It's more of getting the problem solved, because if you don't get the problem solved, you're not going to have the work. And especially with experienced people, because when you have inexperienced people, what they've had happen, what I've seen happen at other companies is, stuff gets missed and things like that. And also the other concern is the engineers aren't getting mentored. That's a big problem. How do you know if you're doing it right or wrong? There are things that I learn even, because I was taught badly in college that I had to relearn because I was taught poorly. So, I wasn't being developed.
The industry as a whole is trying to fill that gap because there are a lot of professionals who left the profession, during 2008, 2009 recession. And so there's just a gap, right? There aren't, I think ASCE has their data on it is that we're going to be short 10,000 engineers or something along those lines every year for the next 5 years. Like, there just aren't enough. And there's a lot of us coming up from the, at the entry level stage, but there aren't enough, mid to senior level engineers to mentor us and to teach us.
I want to emphasize what's happened in that case. A lot of the firms during the Great Recession laid off the experienced people because they had money problems. During the pandemic, the same thing happened. I worked for a client and I got laid off because they were trying to save money. And then what's happened is, if you're the engineering insurance company, you're loving it because now you're hating it because you're going to pay out future claims because you don't have the experienced people. And what happens is when you don't have experienced people, the work's going to go to crap, and then you got contractors pissed off. And then right now, especially when you have supply chain issues, okay, you screwed up designing something, built something incorrectly, and you can't get the material to fix it. That's a big problem. We're seeing that. I'm seeing that with a lot of the, construction problems, that you're hearing about in the news. Not enough supply. And then you got, welders retiring now. Because there's no welders to fill the shoe, and I blame part of it on the boss is not thinking ahead. I blame that because now when you are in the, I've worked for firms that did what was called hire and fire. When you do that, a lot of them get out. I know one guy, he got into, one friend of mine, she got into flipping house, real estate because she kept getting laid off in structural engineering. She said, screw it, I'm not going to do this anymore, And then, it happens in a lot of other fields too, like accounting. I don't know if you're familiar with the one of the Marvel superhero movies, the guy that played the Ten Rings movie, I think that's what it is. He was an accountant, and he worked for Deloitte, and 9 months into his new job, he got laid off, wasn't told why, got laid off, so he decided to go into acting, and now they're complaining they can't get accountants. And in his concession speech, when he won, I think, an Oscar or Emmy or one of those awards, he said, I thank Deloitte for laying me off. And that's going to happen. When I was an engineer, the same thing. I kept hearing the talk. We don't have enough engineers. We don't have them. Yeah. And I hear it all the time, and a lot of people got out of it. When I was during the Great Recession, I was thinking about getting out because there was no jobs in it.
Right.
And it hurt, because you put in all this time and effort, right now there's engineering graduates that don't want to, people don't want to go to engineering because it costs too much investment, too much time for so little gain, so a lot of them are going into real estate and finance and different occupations. And when you have a shortage of it, that's going to be a problem.
Right.
And I really want people to stay in engineering and like engineering. I like engineering, I'll be honest. I'm more of a problem solver than going out to market and get the job. I want to do the job. I'm more of the type, let's see if we can do it. I'm not there necessarily to make the money or, that's not what I'm about. I'm more, and I was told a long time ago by a friend, you don't go into engineering to make the money. That's just not possible. And and the advantage of your company is it's owned by private equity, so there's different pots of money to go through, where it's, like an E&R type company, a highly ranked company, that's going to be a little difficult. The problem with cutting costs is when you do it often enough, you get rid of the help that you really need. And then, projects go bad, and I've been part of it, where I've had to clean up the mess that, they hired an engineer with 3-4 years experience. Years ago, they designed a BART transit station. And I had to go in and clean up the mess because the guy they hired said he was going to do it, and it didn't work out, And then there was 1 year ago, there was an architecture firm. We're going to have structural engineering services. They hired a guy with 6 years experience to run the whole department. And he ran it into the ground, basically, because he was inexperienced. This is the Great Recession, and then they had to get rid of the engineering services. So that's not good for you guys, especially. Right. The problem with it, being young is good. Having all the tools, that's great. Knowing where stuff is, I think that's great. The problem is experience. You can't do it without experience. You can know the material, but experience helps you out because you got to know where the answer is coming from. You got to know what these computer programs are coming up with. And that's why in the software packages, when you learned yours, it said in there, don't use the computer to rely on the results. Check them first. It actually is a big box on the software package. That's why. Because they've had people design buildings and they've collapsed. And the engineer's defense was, well, the computer said it was okay, and he lost his license over it.
Wow.
People died.
Yep. It's our line of work, for sure.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like they don't pay us enough.
when I think when lives are at risk, yeah, definitely.
It's not enough to pay, in the U.S. anyway, different countries do it differently. In the U.S., I feel like they don't pay us enough. And I think part of engineering is having the love to do it, not necessarily to make the money.
Yeah, I think the saying goes something like, the code is written in blood, right?
Well, I don't know about that. I've heard the code has been written by lawyers. because it's like in the old days when I was in college, it was don't put the cat. They had to put on directions of microwaves. Don't put put your cat in the microwave. Because people were doing it. When the TV show Elf came out, people were putting cats in the microwave.
Okay. Do you have any final questions or thoughts, Alex and Melesio or Michael?
Nope. Thanks for spending time out of your day.
Thank you so much.
It was great to get to meet you and know you.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I look forward to hearing from you soon.
Okay. Yep. Thank you so much.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Have a great rest of your day.